All right, welcome to the Side Action, episode 22 of season 5. My name is Jim Weglars, aka Wegs. You could follow me at Wegspool on Twitter and on Instagram.
And I'm Steve Roberts, aka Action. You can follow me on Twitter at 31S Roberts.
Follow the podcast at Side Action Pod on Twitter and Side Action Podcast on Instagram. So, Action, obviously, you said you took it easy, you just watched the games at home. You had some big weekends out, honeymoons and such. So, what's this weekend got? What's going on? You just sitting around? That's it?
Got a booking for X Golf Simulator.
Ooh.
Getting the season started off right here. Got to keep the swing in motion so that I'm ready once the weather really breaks and we can get back outside. So, a couple of buddies are going to hit golf balls on Friday, but I think that's the extent of the weekend plans. How about you?
I always have a lot going on. Action, it's filling up. As I mentioned on the pod, I can see Johnny U. Going to see Milos 2.0. He's moved to the Burbs. I think there might be a date in my future on Friday. After the pod, going to see Mom tonight. Haven't seen Mom in a couple weeks. So
nice.
Everybody wants to see Jimmy Wegs. Make sure he's still living, even though they could just watch me on YouTube if they want, and see your great soccer outfit. And last weekend was kind of crazy. Saturday was a full day, 4 stops in one day. It was like seeing different friends. Fortunately, a celebration of life, which turned out to be good. Some birthday celebrations, and then I watched the games at Four Shadows, which was fun. And the hot streak continues. Action. Just keep stacking units, baby. That's what I got to do.
Yeah, nice. I forgot. It just popped into my mind. We're gonna go see the Suns play on Saturday. They play here in Detroit at the Little Caesars Arena. So we'll take our first trip down there, watch the Suns and the Pistons.
That's right. It's Melissa's team, right? She's the Suns.
That's right. Yeah, and Jaden Ivey, of course, Purdue Boilermaker, plays for our hometown Pistons. So I'm looking forward to that game.
There you go. See, so you got some action. I knew you'd have some action. Well, let's talk a little bit about the NFL, and then we'll go into the college basketball preview, which is the main thrust here. We'll start with the NFC Championship game, which couldn't really call it a game. It started off as a game, and 2 great defenses, and everybody's favorite, Mr. Irrelevant got knocked out on the second pass of the game, and Brock Purdy. Now, mind you, the Eagles benefited from they obviously missed the challenge for San Francisco on the 4th and 6. Big catch by Devontae Smith, but was it? It wasn't. Kind of interesting. They end up scoring the touchdown, going up 7-zip, and then, Purdy gets knocked out in the second play. It was a big hit by Hassan Reddick, and that was a challenge. Actually, it was originally incomplete on the field, now a fumble, and then turns out he obviously tore his ulnar ligament, but nobody knew at the time. Mm-hmm. Enter Josh Johnson. This game just kind of went south. They actually tied the game at 7. I think that was their second drive with Josh Johnson.
Yeah.
But after that, the Eagles just kind of overpowered them, and they did get some benefit of some calls. A lot of people were saying that, but 31-7, hard to complain about officiating in that game.
Yeah, that's true. I think that Kyle Shanahan obviously has some regrettable choices there early on, and the way the first quarter went, it was just like everything went wrong for the 49ers.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, though, despite the pregame bet on the Eagles, I don't recall if you had a bet on the Eagles as well, but the live betting opportunities in that game, once it was pretty clear that Purdy was not going to come back in, were just like drastic. I looked down at one point and the Eagles were 6.5 when it was clear Purdy was not coming back. So I punched one in there, and then Josh Johnson led them to that touchdown drive, and the live line dropped down to like 5. And so I just kept adding more and more Eagles because it was pretty clear that the Niners weren't going to be able to do much offensively.
Right. And I forgot to mention Josh Johnson got knocked out in the second half. So they brought Purdy back, and he can't throw the ball. Yeah. So I was wondering if they were going to go to Juszczyk or whoever the emergency quarterback was, or run the Wildcat or something. I had the Eagles future. Remember, if you remember, plus 220. I ended up doing the Niners teaser. I teased them up to 8.5, and then the total up to 52.5 under. So obviously that didn't come in because they got whitewashed. But I didn't do live betting in that one. I should have. You know, a little bit of cash flow crunch these days, action. So as soon as that game ended, I was like feverishly refreshing to see when I got my money in my account so I could hit the second game. I
Yeah.
had a bet on the second game, but I actually put some live money down on that one. So
Yeah. And I mean, much like the Eagles season, they got out to that big lead in the first half, and then it was quite clear the second half was going to slow down because they've done it a number of times this year where they get up big and they just pound the rock for the entire second half, and that clock runs. There
right,
was what I think 10 points scored in the second half. So
right.
just a,
And
a clear game script that the Eagles have played all season long.
yeah, and Hurts only threw for 120 yards or whatever. He didn't need to throw the ball. And
Right.
so we'll talk about, you know, early look in a minute. I know you know, they rolled to the Super Bowl in a pretty easy fashion, but you know, we'll see if that matters. So the second game, much better game. The Chiefs, Bengals, you know, Chiefs end up closing as a 2-point favorite. That was a huge, what a weird week on that line. Total
Yeah.
went up to 48. In this one, I did get the Chiefs +7. I think it was 7.5, 7 in the teaser. So I got it before all this movement, and then I got the total down to 41. So I was looking pretty good even from the beginning because the Chiefs just came out like gangbusters. You know, they were sacking Burrow. They took it personally with this whole Burrowhead BS that they were saving the mayor. That was so stupid. They won one game in Arrowhead. Um, but then the game kind of stabilized, you know, because the Chiefs, as good as they looked, they were only up 6-0, right? They had two
Yeah.
field goal drives.
Right.
They ended up going up 13-3, looking pretty good. But, you know, even that play was on a fourth down to Kelsey. And then Burrow did what he does. He's hitting, throwing into double coverage, but his guys are making plays. And they tied the game at 13 and then again at 20. And Chiefs kept losing receivers. They only had finished with three receivers, and including like the, you know, all the guys we've talked about besides, you know, MVS had a great game.
Yeah.
Valdez Scanlon had a great game. And then, you know, it kind of looked like the Chiefs, they got kind of lucky to get, you know, they obviously got the 123-20 of the game winning field goal, but it almost, it really shouldn't have happened, right? I mean,
Hmm.
the Bengals were throwing, they get sacked, they kicked a punt down the middle, the guy gets a 29-yard return, they get the hit out of bounds, they get in. I mean, it was almost improbable that the game didn't go to overtime.
Yeah, no kidding. I was really holding out hope to see that first overtime in this playoffs so we could see the new rules come to play.
Right.
Mostly because I had that bet on over 47, and I thought I had a good chance at that point if
Mhm.
it went to overtime that both teams could score and then they would go into another sudden death round. But obviously that didn't happen based on the poor decision making by the punter, and then the got to really feel for the guy with the late hit out of bounds on Mahomes.
You
That
know, so
defensive end played such a tremendous game, and I'm sure he'll be thinking about that play for a long time.
yeah, and then my live bet was early in the game, they weren't scoring. I hit 45, the total 45 under.
Wow,
So,
nice.
so I got lucky because it was like, oh man, they're gonna score a touchdown, go over, or whatever. And they kicked that field goal, game was over. I'm like, Jimmy Weggs, hot streak
The middle,
continues.
nice.
So, well, as we look at the Super Bowl action, I mean, I think the line's around 1.5 now for the Eagles, and the totals between 49.5 or 50. I know you have your take on it, so I'll let you go first, you know, because you kind of, you're like, I'm taking that AFC champ.
Yeah, I mean, I hit the Chiefs right on open, and thankfully I got to it a little bit slow because I think at least at Circa and a number of other places they opened at two and maybe 1.5 point favorites,
Right.
and just an avalanche of money in the first hour that came in on the Eagles that pushed them all the way out to 1.5 and 2 by the time I went to bed, and eventually settled in at 2.5, I think, on Monday morning before it's dropped back now to like 2, I think, as we record here on Wednesday night. So
Right.
I did bet the Chiefs. I think that the Eagles' strength of schedule has been piss poor. I think I read on Twitter today that they have the 30th ranked strength of schedule so far in the season.
Mhm.
And I mean, they just walked through the playoffs between the Giants and then a quarterbackless San Francisco 49ers team. I just don't think that they are quite the same team that the metrics show that they are.
Okay. You know, I'll disagree. I mean, it's not that I agree with your logic, but I just don't think it's right. I think the Chiefs, we'll see how healthy they get. You know, we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Mahomes won't be 100%. He'll play fine. And he had a great game, right? I just, to me, and we'll talk more about it next week. Is Andy Reid going to run the ball ever?
No,
Because
and they can't.
he refuses to run the football. The Eagles' pass defense is number one for a reason. Their pass rush is incredible. You got to run the football against these guys, and if they don't commit to the run, I just don't see them putting up points. And I think Mahomes was going to get beat up, and the offensive line for the Eagles is no joke. I mean, they're obviously that. I knew that defensive line for the Chiefs played good against the Bengals. They were banged up, and they still could. Chris Jones had a great game against the Bengals. Can they stop the run? They did really good against the Bengals, but that's what a compromised line. So I'll take the guys in the trenches, even though Hurts. I think the big thing is, can Hurts play in the big moment, because he's going to have to make plays in this game.
Yeah.
So that's where he can make mistakes and keep the Chiefs in the game. But I don't know, man. I just, even looking on, I was all over the Chiefs on Sunday. I was like, they're going to win this game. And Andy Reid, what the hell's he doing? He's running these reverses and all this fun stuff, and then he gets a little bit of lead, and he just puckers up, man. I just run the football and play action, and we'll see. So yeah, in full disclosure, I have the Eagles at plus 550. I told you that. So I'm going to bet on the Chiefs at some level. But 2 points, it's tough. It's a tough number for me to back the Chiefs because it's just such a short number. So anyway.
Do you think a lot of this was obviously going to hinge on the status of Mahomes? I mean, I think a lot of people wrongly are thinking, oh, 2 weeks he's going to be fine. But
No.
I mean, he was hobbled in that late in the second half, and it was clear that he re-injured it or aggravated it on some level. So that high ankle sprain may not quite have the full 3 weeks of healing time that the calendar says that it did.
Yeah, it's a 4 to 6 week injury. He's only been out for it's 10 days now.
Yeah.
Right. So, or 12 days now. He played a yeoman's effort. They give him, tore it all. I've heard all about it last week, and that's why I kind of got on board with he's going to play well. But look, I just think that he was magic. He made the plays against the Bengals. But if you look at the second half of that game, they didn't do very much. They didn't do much in that game. The Bengals figured it out with Mahomes and that offense, especially because they lost all those receivers. Those receivers got to come back, and I think more importantly, the defense kind of got figured out. They figured out the protection, and the Eagles line is way better than the Bengals. So I don't know. It's maybe just a meathead handicap there, but as you said, the metrics may be skewed because of the strength of schedule, and the Chiefs have played a tougher strength of schedule, no question. But I don't know, man. We'll see what happens. I don't necessarily want the Eagles to win because, trust me, everybody in my company, we're going to be singing that every fall instead of every retreat. Fly, Eagles, fly. I mean, it's insane. But, maybe I'll flip again like I did on the Bengals, like I did last week as the week goes on.
Do you have any opinion on the total? It's not. I wrote 49.5 here, but today there's a little bit of movement
50.
Now out to 50.5 and 51 in some spots.
I like under, dude. I know everybody loves over. I know it's going up, but my handicap is that the Eagles are going to shut down the Chiefs quite a bit more than people think. And on the flip side, as you mentioned, the Eagles love to run the football if they're up. They're up in this game, squeeze the clock. I don't see any different, unless it's like, a few years ago when it was like a shootout with the Patriots. I just don't know, man. The Eagles defense is pretty good. I don't think they're going to give up a ton of points. So you're talking about the Chiefs scoring. Look, against the Jags, they barely scored any points, right? I mean, in the last week against the Bengals, they only scored 23. You think they're going to put up 26 points, 27? I don't think so.
Okay.
What about you? You're over guy?
I bet the over today when I saw the move starting. So I don't really have much to back it up at this point, but let me get back to you.
Ultimately, I probably will tease this game because to hedge myself, Chiefs to 8 and, maybe down to 43.5 over, right? That seems like a better bet for me, but that's just a hedge position. And we'll talk a little bit about that next week. You can help me a little bit. I'm not going to hedge all of it. I feel good about the Eagles too, but I think I'm going to do a lot of props next week too, just to hedge as well.
I do think, though, if you're interested in a money line, it's probably going to go down. I think if you want to bet Chiefs money line, it might be the high point right now. I think if anything, this number might be going closer to pick 'em rather than back to 2.5 or 3.
Gotcha. Yeah, at some point it'll go back down. So, they show Mahomes dancing on the sideline or
Right.
something, and,
Yeah,
that's what happened
exactly.
last week, right?
Yep.
All right, well let's go with the basketball preview here. Action. I've mentioned some of the stuff you put in here. So, and I don't know what's official in basketball. You had put Power Five. I'm calling it Power Six with the Big East, and then I added the
Okay.
American and the West Coast on the
The
non-mid majors.
fringe, the middle tier.
The middle tier. So let's talk. I put the class of college basketball as the Big 12. I know you might have take umbrage with that, but I say that because there's 7 teams in the top 25 at Ken Palm. There's no dominant team. I mean, Kansas obviously is there. They've played well, and Texas has kind of played better than people expect. We know what Baylor's done in the past, but you've got teams like TCU and Iowa State and West Virginia and Kansas State, who's kind of been a bit of a surprise to me, all in this conference that I think can do some damage in March, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I take no umbrage with your classification as the Big 12 is the best conference this year because it is. I mean, all of these teams outside of like Oklahoma State and Oklahoma, I think really can make some noise in the tournament this season. So I whether or not any of them are like national title contenders, though, I'm not so sure. I mean,
Right.
Kansas obviously is the reigning champs, and I think Texas might be able to get there by the time the tournament rolls around. But outside of them, I don't know that I would be backing any of them to win 6 games in March.
Yeah, I agree, and we'll talk more as the season goes on about it. But I mean, Kansas like still plus 1100 to win, which is it's kind of in the mix for the top teams. But I don't know if that number is really right. That's more of they've got a huge backing, obviously. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the Big Ten, your squad, Purdue, is like the clear favorite in the conference, and they're plus 1200 to win the title. You've got Zach Edey, who's just a force, and he's figured out, how to stay on the court and not foul and all that. The rest of the team, the conference is, I mean, the big dogs from the past, Michigan, Michigan State, Wisconsin, aren't that good. Rutgers is a surprise. Northwestern is a huge surprise. And then you guys in the middle, Iowa, Indiana, and Illinois they're good. They're good teams, but they're not going to shock the world and run the table, right? So it's really Purdue or bust in terms of the national championship.
Yeah, unfortunately, I hate to say it again because the Big Ten has failed to put a team in the national championship picture since 2001, right? It was
Right.
Michigan State, Mateen
Yep.
Cleaves, and we're now going on 22 years without a champion. It's really sad.
It is.
Uh, but I also don't think I'm going to be betting on Purdue to do it because they never have. I don't like betting on things that have never happened before.
Right.
So, I mean, I am excited though because Edey is a dominant force that we have not seen in college basketball in quite some time, and he goes out there night in and night out and really carries this team. And we spoke a little bit last week. They finally have a defense to go with that elite offense. They're now 17th ranked in defensive efficiency, and so they definitely fit the mold of that Ken Palm era national championship with having both offense and defense in the top 20.
Yeah, and I guess I should have done a better precursor to all this stuff. If you've just listened to us for the first time after this is our 5th season, we really espouse, using Ken Palm, which is Ken Pomeroy's index. It's kenpalm.com. He's got, a ton of metrics that you can see. We kind of reference their offensive defensive efficiency. There's more than that. Action has in the past, I don't know if we're going to keep doing it, has its own index, kind of using those numbers and then adding kind of different weights to it. So that's what we're referring to as Ken Palm. I should have said that from the top. But to your point, Purdue is like 17th in Ken Palm in defense. That's like they're usually like 80th or 50th or something, even though they're still top 4 offensive efficiency. So to your point, they definitely can make some noise, and I kind of expect them, unless they kind of falter the next month, they're probably going to be a 1 seed. You know what I mean? They should be.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's always easier, obviously, to make it to the Final Four as a 1 seed.
I got to add to it, how great is it to see Wisconsin in the bottom of the Big Ten? I mean, it's been so many years that they overachieve, and I'm just really loving the fact that they suck this year.
They totally suck. It's weird. The other day I was like, oh, Illinois, Wisconsin, like, oh, they really stink. Like, what happened, but down year, it's still Greg Gard, right? He didn't go anywhere, did
Yeah,
he?
yeah, yeah. I think they've had a few injuries that they're dealing with, but it's still fun to watch.
Yeah, and I'm surprised Michigan's not that good. I mean, it's funny how these things work. Now, is Rutgers, is that Ron Harper Jr. still there? I mean, what's the deal? Like, they have a really good team this year.
Yeah, no, Harper is gone. I think it's just really a good team, all-around team. I mean, they still have Mulcahy and Omaruyi, the center, who is there. Is a good player. Outside of that, a lot of team or players that you probably haven't heard of before. So
Right, right. Then we move to the SEC. SEC, not unlike, well, actually, maybe a little bit stronger teams at the top in the Big Ten. They've got a couple of contenders, quote unquote. Tennessee being, the current number one AP team, they're the top defensive team in the nation. They're plus 1,400 to win it all, and they've played very well. But we should also say at the top that this year is wide open, and you think you said it yesterday or last week on the pod. There's no clear dominant team. The number one seed team has been rotating in maybe a couple weeks here and there. So there's probably about 8 teams that can win it all this year or more. Tennessee is one of them, though. Have you gotten to see them play much?
I watched them a couple times. I think I watched the game against Kentucky a few weeks ago, and I did catch a little bit of the Big 12 game against Texas last week. I had Texas in my betting portfolio, which didn't come home. But I mean, they are tremendous defensively. You can't argue with that. But my question for them is on offense, much like they have been in past years, where they just don't shoot the ball very well. And Rick Barnes is another coach who has not been successful when March rolls around.
Yeah, he's not a great tournament coach for whatever reason. And to your point, they're 33rd in offense. So that's when we try to look, at least for me, actually, about you, I look for two top 20s. I'm looking at least top 20, if not top 15 in offensive defensive efficiency when I'm looking for my teams to make a deep run. How about Alabama? I haven't seen them play in years past. Nate Oates' team has been all offense, no defense. This is a change. They're top 6 this year on the 23rd on offense. So there's your ambulance. So they're a team that could make some noise. I haven't seen them play much, but they're plus 1,200. They're actually at better odds than Tennessee right now, which is a little strange. Have been able to see them play much or no?
A little bit here and there. I mean, they have just been obliterating opponents. Talk about ATS darling. I mean, they beat Vanderbilt by 57 last night, and Oklahoma. They lost actually to Oklahoma over the weekend, which was a bit surprising. But a team that has been certainly dominating in the ATS department.
Right. Auburn's kind of in the mix too. A team that's a surprise in that conference is Texas A&M. They're not great in Ken Palm, but they've been winning a lot of games. And then the two underachievers that had very high, good odds to win or get in the Final Four were Kentucky and Arkansas. Their odds have dropped to plus 4,500 for Kentucky, plus 4,000 for Arkansas to win it all. And I don't know what's going on. Usually Arkansas kind of turns it on about now. Musselman and his crew start playing well, but I'm not sure if they just had, maybe they lost too many horses and the defense isn't as good.
Good defense, but I think their offense is down a little bit this year at Arkansas.
Gotcha. When you look at the Pac-12, they're basically, again, repeat, top heavy. You got UCLA, who's really good. I mean, they're great. They're, number 3 in Ken Palm and, number 9 in the AP. So they're really good. And then you got Arizona plus 1,800. They're always talented, but we saw them kind of crap out last year. They screwed me over, actually. I would have maybe won a pool or two. And after that, it's, down year. USC, Utah, Oregon, they're kind of middle of the pack in terms of Ken Palm. So they're not really, and they win some games in the Pac-12, but the bottom of the Pac-12 is really bad. So any interest in those? I know in the past, you rode Johnny Juzang to a player pool championship once.
Yeah. Well, I got to see Arizona play in person in December against Indiana and was very impressed at that time. I know that they've sputtered a little bit recently. And I've been reading that it's looking like the Pac-12 is going to be a 2-bid league. So it might just be UCLA and Arizona that get there this year.
Right. And the love for the West Coast is very low in the tournament. But, I mean, UCLA made a deep run. A couple of years ago, they had UCLA and USC go really deep. So they can still be outside forces there. And then the ACC, God, what happened in the ACC? It's
I don't know.
I mean, Virginia everybody loves Virginia. They're like 6th in the AP, but they're not that good in Ken Palm. They're 12, and they're the only team in the top 20 in the ACC in Ken Palm, which to me means not only are the teams not good, but it's just surprising. Usually you'll have one team that they show up better in Ken Palm, but the league's not that good anymore. Clemson is the pretender. They're the Tigers, paper Tigers. They're like 18-5, but they're 59th in Ken Palm. So I was going to line up to bet them last night. I got in too late, and of course they lost to Boston College on the road. So it's spots like that I'm looking at.
Yeah, I had Boston College last night. I think Clemson is a team that's a bit overrated, and in general, in conference games, I like to look at home underdogs, and Boston College fit that mold last night. But I mean, I'm with you. Virginia really looks to be the only legitimate threat to really probably even make the tournament, but make a run. I think that some of these teams, Duke and North Carolina, Miami, obviously have the clout to get there as well. So I'm sure we'll see more than just Virginia in the tournament, but I wouldn't count on any of them.
Well, North Carolina has some talent. They've won 4 straight. They're plus 3,500. They've had a great run last year. That's a team that, I know you don't like to bet futures. I don't usually do it, but that's a number I might get behind. Plus 3,500. They make a deep run. They still got Baycott in there. They got another young guy. We'll see what happens, but they certainly can do better in this league. It's just whether they can play against the Big 12 and some of the other SEC teams come March.
Yep.
Lastly, the Big East, or the Big Six, as we're calling it. UConn has been pretty highly ranked initially, but they're kind of faltering now in conference play. They've lost 6 games in the conference, but their odds are still plus 1,800. Marquette has been lighting it up. They can score with anybody, but they can't play defense. And it's kind of the same thing with Xavier. Any other teams? I mean, this is a weird because Nova's, I guess they're done. Is that it? Nova's no good anymore?
I got to admit, I had no idea that Jay Wright retired until I was watching the Purdue game. I think it was on Sunday, and he was on the broadcast, and I was like, "What the hell?"
Yeah, I remember when that happened. I follow him on Twitter, or some Nova person on Twitter, so he's always popping up. I guess he's the guy. I mean, we always love Jay Wright. I mean, the guy, well dressed, best dressed coach in college basketball, but he obviously can recruit because now they got nobody, and they're terrible this year.
Yeah, not good. But I did bet them tonight in the underdog spot, but we'll see what happens. I really like Xavier. Sean Miller is back and coaching this team, and I think that he has made a huge difference coming back into that team. Despite their defensive woes, 94th ranked, they are really fun to watch, and they put up points in plenty. I did see that Zach Fremantle, their big center, just went out with a hand injury for a month minimum, so that's going to impact their numbers a little bit, but a team I'm definitely looking forward to betting in March.
Yeah, me too. They're going to score on teams unless they have a stout defense, so they can win a game or two easily. So then those other conferences, the American, is really a one. They might get 2 teams in, but Houston is the team, right? And this is a team we've loved for a couple of years. Kelvin Sampson's the coach there. They're number 2 in Ken Palm. They're 20-2. They're plus 700 to win, so they're actually odds-on favorite to win the title. They did stub their toe against Temple, and they're going to play them again on Sunday. But besides Temple, you got Memphis, and that's pretty much it. So they could be one of those number 1 seeds unless they kind of falter down the stretch. But they'll be a dangerous team in March.
Yeah, definitely. Marcus Sasser is the man, and talk about a get right spot. I think laying the points on the road at Temple on Sunday be a good bet with this team.
I like it. And then, traditionally in the West Coast Conference, you got the Zags, who have been, they've been a top 5 team for what it seems like a decade. They're a little bit down this year, and I haven't gotten to see them and what's going on. The numbers aren't that bad. They're plus 2,000 to win the title, but it's really St. Mary's that's kind of taken it to them. We'll see. They're going to play on Saturday. They're a little bit better in Ken Palm, 7 overall. They're 18th in the AP. Have you gotten to see either of these teams play this year?
I watched Gonzaga play against Purdue, where we pasted them, but that was several months ago. I haven't really circled back to the WCC yet.
Right. I mean, last year WCC was deep. They had 3 or 4 good teams that were good. This year it seems it's just the top 2. You've highlighted some mid-major teams outside of those kind of tweener teams there. FAU, they're 38th in KenPom, 21-1. I mean, this team out of the Conference USA is kicking butt. I mean, have you seen them play?
Yeah, I did watch a little bit of their recent game, uh, and they are really fun to watch because they've got two big guys that they just rotate, kind of similar like Purdue last year, and then
Okay.
they've got another seven guys that are all like cut from the same cloth. Wing guys, point guards that can
Mhm.
shoot, and they run a ton of pick and roll, but they also have these two guys that they can throw it inside. And I think
Nice.
that's a recipe that will allow them to compete with almost anyone in March. So I'm
Yeah, if
really
you've got
looking
a
forward to see them.
size, if you have size, and on the perimeter you can kind of go positionless with those
Hmm.
wings, you can really guard shooters, which I'm definitely have to check them out. They could be one of our, kind of like Oral Roberts a couple of years ago, making deep run.
Yeah,
You've mentioned
big
Liver.
game tomorrow night against UAB. I'm really interested in watching.
Yeah, the Blazers are pretty good too. Then you've got Liberty here. They're 46th in KenPom. They're always kind of in the mix. The
Yep.
Flames are a good team to watch. You've got Oral Roberts, who I just mentioned from previous years, but they must have a great coach because somebody who can recruit. They're always in the mix. 57th. They're 20-4. Sam Houston State, I like that poll. 16-5, and they're 64th in KenPom. You got Kent State on here from the MAC, 69th, and KenPom 17-4, but this College of Charleston team, I've seen them in the top 25. They just fell out. They're 21-2. Their metrics aren't as good as the other teams. Maybe that strength of schedule. I'm assuming they light it from three, or what's their MO?
Yeah, I mean, offensive rebounding very strong. They don't shoot the three that well. It's more of a inside team. They're in the bottom 200s in the 3-point percentage, surprisingly.
1 second action.
No
Mom, this
problem.
is a podcast.
But you're right. I mean, Charleston is a team that has been catching a lot of buzz this year, mostly due to that top 25 ranking, I think. A lot of college basketball pundits were surprised to see a Charleston team from the CAA make it in the top 25. And I think the conference is really the reason that they've kind of dipped down in the metrics. They don't quite get the same strength of schedule bump that all
Right,
their
right.
colleagues do.
Exactly. So Mama Wegs is here. Thanks, Mom. Should have told you to use your key. Anyway, let's go into some games. We don't have to cover them all, but we've got quite a bit of action. As we go through the season for the new listeners, we usually highlight a few games, talk about them. The thing about college basketball is different than both college or pro football is the line doesn't come out till like the day before.
Mhm.
So one of the things we're able to do is Action can kind of impute the line from KenPom, because to be honest with you, a little betting tip, they always use the KenPom lines.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you can find some value. But we usually try to give you some Friday night action because Action loves the Friday night action, and then some big games on Saturday and throughout the week. So you've highlighted some. I put on Boise State and San Diego State. These are pretty good teams in my old conference, the Mountain West. I know you didn't put the Action in there, but both these teams have a chance to make the tournament. I know as in traditionally San Diego State does, and Boise's been on the fringe. It looks like these teams both play great defense, like they always have, especially Boise this year. You like either of these teams?
I would always gravitate towards San Diego State. Uh, Given no knowledge at all, that's probably my lean. To be honest, I don't know much about Boise State this year. I did see that San Diego State dropped a game last night
They did.
to maybe CSU, was it? Uh,
Nevada, I think it
that's
was.
right, Nevada. So I mean, certainly
CSU's
a
back
bounce
this
back.
year.
I think it's a bounce back spot for San Diego State. That'd probably be my lean.
Nice. So this Saturday slate's pretty rich. I know you highlighted some games. Your team, Purdue's playing Indiana. This is like the family. What
Yeah.
happens when you and your dad, you guys watch together, or you like put
Not
down
recently.
the?
No, we haven't recently. I mean, to answer your question, what's happened recently is total domination by one side. The Purdue
Uh-oh.
Boilermakers, I think, have won like 8 out of the last 9 meetings against Indiana.
Wow.
But I do think things are going to be a little bit different this year because despite Zach Edey's dominance in the lane, he's a minus 1100 favorite to win the Wooden Award, by the way.
Right.
We didn't mention at the top. Trace Jackson Davis has been equally good this season and
Yep.
nipping at his heels. And I think that Indiana might be in for a little upset on Saturday.
Yeah, you're showing Purdue -2 on the road, so you'd like the the home
Yeah,
dog.
definitely taking the home dog, which is a theme throughout my Big Ten betting this season.
Yeah, you know your dad's listening, so you're just trying to make him happy. Some of the other matchups that we highlighted, you've got Kansas playing at Ohio or Iowa State, +1 on that one. That's the noon game. Do you like have a lean in that one?
Yeah, I like the home team in that game too. Kansas has not been quite their dominant self this season. I think they had a 3-game losing streak
Hmm.
recently before the trip to Lexington last weekend. And then they dropped another game. No, I'm sorry. They did win this week against Kansas State, but going on the road to Ames is going to be a different story.
Yeah, I like it because Iowa State because it's just this week for Kansas is a gauntlet. I mean,
Hmm.
they're playing Texas on Monday too, so it's a little bit. I mean, Iowa State's good, but Texas is kind of like right on their heels, so it's kind of a sandwich spot for them.
Yeah.
They're playing three games in whatever 5 days or something. That's pretty tough. Let's see. You've got when we talk about Texas and Kansas State, they're playing too. The Big 12 is loaded. Every week you're going to get
Yeah.
tons of matchups that we like. Texas is a 1-point dog at Kansas State. What is the deal with Kansas State? 'Cause I haven't seen them play yet. What is their makeup? Because obviously Texas, I saw them last night. They were playing pretty good. What are they? Are they they got a top player on that team, or they just play really good defense or something?
I no, I wouldn't really say top player. I mean, more of an all-around team, I would
Hmm.
argue. But I mean, defensively, they're 28th ranked, offense 35, so just stout on both sides of the ball. But I think it's the 3-point defense really which carries them. They're very good behind guarding that 3-point line, and I think they're gonna a good bet at home as well. They haven't lost at home this season.
Hmm. There you go. You got Duke, North Carolina in the night game. North Carolina is actually a dog on the road. Duke's played metrically decent. I don't know why they're not better. Maybe they just have young talent that, obviously different coaching. But I don't know. North Carolina getting points. They played better. I kind of be on that side.
Yeah, it seems like 4 is probably a few too many there in that rivalry game. I agree.
Yeah. We talked about Zags and St. Mary's. We don't have a projected points or spread on that one, but I kind of would like to see St. Mary's win this game. We'll see if that actually comes true, but just to give the Zags a little, little refresh in that one. You already mentioned on Sunday, Houston's going to Temple. It's a bounce back spot. I agree with Houston on that one. Any
Mhm.
of these other games tickle your fancy? You got Texas at Kansas, as we mentioned. That's Monday night. And then you've got TCU at K-State again on Tuesday night. More Big 12 stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely would look to the home teams in both of those games. Kansas going off against Texas, I think would be a good bet.
Hmm.
And I also wanted to highlight the scheduling snafu for Northwestern.
Oh, yeah.
Earlier this month, they had a COVID pause and had several games postponed, which just backloaded their schedule to an insurmountable position. They're playing 4 games in 8 days this week, and I think a fifth game on the 12th day. So they did lose last night, faded in the second half, predictably against Iowa. And
Mhm.
then tomorrow night, they're playing at home versus Michigan, which I think is another tough spot for them. And then traveling on Sunday to Wisconsin. So I'm going to be probably fading Northwestern all week.
Yeah, so maybe that we're talking about them as being a tournament team. This is a tough stretch for them
Hmm.
going in there. Okay, well, just so everybody knows, obviously in future weeks, next week we will do Super Bowl, a little bit more detail, do some props, talk about the Gatorade and all that other stuff that everybody wants to hear about. Um, I know your plans for the Super Bowl. I'm going to be at the Four Shadows again, just frequenting
Nice.
during the season, and then we'll hit some college games next week, and then after the Super Bowl, will be pretty much all college besides the recap of the Super Bowl.
Yep. Yeah. Hopefully we can get some Rihanna props on the
Oh,
rundown next week.
oh yeah, exactly. You got to get the 5 head props. She's got a big forehead. Um, so just a reminder, we are going to be in Vegas March 15th through the 18th, 19th. Come join us if you can find a hotel room. It's very hard to find a hotel room, apparently. Even Action, with all his status, is what are you, diamond platinum or whatever you are. He's still getting the door slammed in his face. But if you're out there, let us know. We're going to be out there having a good time and throwing some dice and getting everybody excited about craps again. I haven't thrown dice in a whole 4 months. I got to practice.
Yeah, I gotta warm up the elbow, get some juice in there.
Exactly. Got to get a cortisone shot in that wrist to make sure I get the follow through. But great. But yeah, we already talked about the weekend. I don't know. Hopefully, you're gonna watch some basketball games. There's not. It's weird to not have football. It's like the first
Yeah,
weekend without. Well, there's the Pro Bowl flag football game. You gonna bet on that?
nah, don't think so.
Smart move, Action. Smart move. All right. Well, follow us at Side Action Pod on Twitter and on Instagram. Follow me at Wexpool on Twitter and Instagram.
And follow me on Twitter at 31S Roberts.
All right. Good luck, everybody, and enjoy the weekend.